My son Leo has always had a vivid imagination. He'd spend hours in his room, building elaborate Lego castles and having long, detailed conversations with his stuffed animals. So, when he told me he had a new friend named Charlie, I didn't think much of it. Charlie was, according to Leo, a boy his age, with bright red hair and a love for building secret forts. I'd smile and ask what he and Charlie had been up to. "We're building a spaceship to the moon," he'd say, his eyes sparkling with excitement. It was sweet, a normal part of a 5-year-old's world. I even started setting an extra imaginary plate at dinner for Charlie. It was all just a harmless game. But then, things started to change. The games weren't just about spaceships anymore. I rushed in to find him standing on a chair, trying to reach the lock on his door. He'd never shown any interest in the lock before. "Leo, honey, what are you doing? Be careful, you could fall," I said, lifting him down. He looked at me with an unusually serious expression. "Charlie said we have to lock the door," he whispered. "He says it's to keep the shadows out." A chill went down my spine, but I brushed it off. "Sweetie, there are no shadows to be afraid of. How about we go get some ice cream?" I tried to distract him, but the incident stuck with me. Why would his imaginary friend tell him to lock the door? The strange occurrences didn't stop there. A few days later, I was cleaning up his room and found all his toy cars lined up perfectly against the wall, facing away from the closet. It was odd, because Leo was usually a whirlwind of creative chaos. When I asked him about it, he just shrugged and said, "Charlie doesn't like them looking at him. He says they have too many eyes." I tried to reason with him. "But Leo, they're just toys. They don't have real eyes." He just shook his head firmly. "Charlie says they do." The playful, innocent nature of this imaginary friendship was slowly being replaced by something unsettling. Charlie's rules were becoming more and more specific, and more bizarre. My husband, Mark, thought I was overreacting. "He's just a kid with a big imagination, honey. All kids do weird things." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But my maternal instinct was screaming that something was wrong. One evening, I was tucking Leo into bed. He was unusually quiet. I asked him what was on his mind. He looked at the empty space next to his bed where Charlie supposedly sat. "Charlie's mad at you, Mummy," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "He says you don't listen." My heart sank. "Why is he mad, sweetie?" I asked gently. "Because you opened the closet. He told you not to." I hadn't opened the closet, not that day anyway. But Leo was insistent. This was the first time Charlie had expressed any negative feelings towards me, and it felt personal. It felt like a warning. The breaking point came a week later. I was working from home, and the house was quiet, too quiet. I called out for Leo, but there was no response. A knot of panic tightened in my stomach. I ran upstairs and found his bedroom door was closed. I tried the handle, locked. I knocked, calling his name, my voice trembling. "Leo." Opened the door. Silence. Then I heard a small muffled voice from inside. It was Leo. "I can't. Charlie took the key. He says you're not allowed in our fort anymore." My blood ran cold. I started pounding on the door, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario. "Leo, this isn't funny. Let me in right now." I could hear him start to cry on the other side. "I can't, Mummy. I don't know where the key is." Mark was still at work, so I was on my own. I grabbed a screwdriver from the garage and frantically worked on the old doorknob, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. After what felt like an eternity, the lock clicked open. I burst into the room to find Leo huddled in the corner, sobbing. The room was a mess. His drawings were torn off the walls and ripped to shreds. His favorite stuffed bear had been thrown into the closet, and the door was wedged shut with a toy box. "Leo, are you okay? What happened?" I cried, rushing to hug him. He clung to me, his little body trembling. "Charlie did it," he wept. "He got mad because I wanted to let you in. He said bad things happen to people who break the rules." I looked around the wrecked room, and a cold, hard realization washed over me. This wasn't just a child's fantasy. Something was deeply wrong. I held Leo tight and decided right then and there that Charlie had to go. That night, after Leo finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I sat down with Mark and told him everything, my voice cracking as I recounted the locked door and the trashed room. This time, he listened. The fear in my eyes was undeniable. He finally saw that this was more than just child's play. We agreed that we needed to get help, for Leo's sake and for ours. We couldn't let this invisible presence terrorize our son and our family any longer. The next morning, I sat down with Leo. I told him that while it was fun to have friends, even imaginary ones, friends should never make us feel scared or sad. They shouldn't tell us to lock our parents out or destroy our favorite things. I told him that Charlie was not being a good friend, and it was time for him to leave. Leo looked torn, but he nodded. He was scared too. That day, we went through his room together. We packed a bag for Charlie. We put in an old toy car and a broken crayon. Then, we walked outside, and Leo placed the bag by the curb. "Goodbye, Charlie," he said quietly. We told him Charlie was going on a long trip to find other kids who needed a friend. It was a simple act, but it felt like a powerful ritual, an exorcism of sorts. We also started seeing a child psychologist. She was wonderful. She explained that intense imaginary friendships can sometimes be a way for children to process anxieties or feelings they couldn't articulate. Charlie wasn't a ghost or a monster. He was a manifestation of Leo's own fears and his struggle for control in a world that can feel big and overwhelming to a 5-year-old. The psychologist gave us tools and strategies to help Leo express his feelings in healthier ways. We spent more quality time together, focusing on activities that made him feel safe and empowered. We painted, we built things, and we talked a lot. We made sure he knew he could tell us anything, without fear of judgment. Slowly but surely, Leo started to change back into his happy, carefree self. He stopped talking about Charlie. The shadows in his room became just shadows again. He still played in his room, but his games were filled with joy and laughter, not fear and strange rules. One afternoon, I walked by his open door and saw him lining up his toy cars for a race. I smiled, a wave of relief washing over me. The eyes weren't watching him anymore. Looking back, it was one of the scariest periods of my life as a parent. It taught me to always trust my instincts and to never dismiss my child's fears, no matter how irrational they may seem. Imaginary friends can be a wonderful part of childhood, but when they start to cast a dark shadow, it's a sign that your child needs you to help them find the light. Thanks for listening to our story. If you've ever had a similar experience, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories,